Hey, what's going on, GameLeapers? The OP builds for 13.1. What are these going to be? Well, in today's video, we're going to break down 10 of the most OP, and some of these, honestly, are not even known about, not even heard about. So if you really want to know what only some high elo and the best players in the world are building to abuse their enemies and take their OP, make sure you stick around for the whole video. Any questions, guys, any thoughts, leave them in the comment section. If you have an OP build that you think is underrated and not known about, let us know about it. And of course, if you do actually want to get better at League of Legends, these builds might give you a few more wins, but you're still the same Hearthstone player. Check out the GameLeap website. Our Challenger players and coaches, myself included, we are uploading daily videos for our subscribers. They might include champion courses, guides, high elo VOD analyses, where we break down what the best players do on these champions and in their respective roles that you can easily do in your games as well. So check out those links. And let's get into the builds. Now, starting off at number 10, we have some tech that came out of Korea, and this is T1 Jayce's tech, building Gale Force on Jayce. And because Jayce is getting some huge buffs in 13.1, honestly, this build, you could definitely build it. If you're against a champion with a bit of kite, so for example, you might be playing against a Fiora, for example. She has decent mobility and movement speed, right? So the Gale Force allows you to gap close for kill pressure, but also to escape her own kill threat. Pair this with Collector and then Navori Quick Blades. The actual damage you get from Collector with the lethality, it's really big. And also, once you get Navori Quick Blades, well, you're all about your basic abilities. Your ultimate doesn't really do anything, right? Which is also why you want to max your ultimate right at the end of the game. Do not put any points in this. You want to max your Q first and then your W. And you can see that when this build is built in Challenger, even though it's only 22 games, comfortably over a 60% win rate, and in Master close to a 60% win rate, that's when you know the build actually does work. Of course, Jayce is one of the harder champions to play, so we might not see this build as effective in lower elos because it does require you to know this champion and know how to pilot him. Again, check out our website for videos to do just that. But number 9 on the countdown, guys, is Karma Support. Now you're like, Karma Support, this is nothing new. Of course not. But what I'm talking about is going first strike Karma Support with Night Harvester. This is actually like one of the most fun setups that I've ever played, probably because it is so obnoxious. But with your Mantra Q, the damage you deal with first strike and the goals you'll get, of course, and also with Night Harvester and then Sorcerer's Shoes, it is legit. Like, you will half HP people as a support. And because your R and Q is just so easy to land, right, there's a very good chance you'll probably end up dealing the most damage on your team in most games. For your secondary tree, you can take Taste of Blood and then Treasure Hunter like it recommends here, but you can also take something like Mana Flow and Transcendence. You can take Scorch and Transcendence, something like this. Even Absolute Focus might be good to really maximize your damage when you run out of base full HP with your R and Q. So consider giving this a shot in 13.1, and you can actually see with this rune page and the build itself at the bottom, a 54% win rate in Platinum and above and close to 500 matches. So this is a legit sample space, and hopefully you guys are encouraged by actually looking at this. Now moving on to number 8. This might sound a little bit weird because at the moment lots of Twitch players might be playing him as a support, right, and you're going AP. Well, I'm talking about AP Twitch, but I'm actually talking about playing him in the mid lane. Now this is some recent tech, but Twitch players have actually racked up a ton of games doing this in Platinum and above, and even in high relos, this is actually played. So all I'm really talking about here is Nash's with cooldown boots and then Crown of Shattered Queen, and of course for your rune page you want to be taking Halo Blades. Now Presence of Mind is here because you don't want to go during the laning phase, right? So this is a super fun setup to try out. Now lots of you Twitch players as well will probably just start your Q, and you'll just Q into the mid lane and try to cheese the enemy mid laner. This will work if the enemy mid laner is showing on the first wave really early. So do not skill anything until you see the enemy mid laner. This is very important because you can see here in terms of the skill path, when you actually get your E at level 1, you have a better chance of winning. But in some games you will want to get your Q first, which is probably what most Twitchers are doing, but make sure it's the right game to do it in. So if the enemy mid laner shows, especially if they use their first ability on the minions, go nuts. You will honestly probably get that flash with the Q attack speed you get and Halo Blades. But yes, AP Twitch, great at scaling, might have to be a little bit careful with some matchups in the mid lane, but this is the best way to actually get fed doing AP Twitch. Now moving on to number 7 on the countdown, another AP champion. Honestly, probably one of the top 3 junglers in the game at the moment. This is Elise. Now for Elise being broken, one of the big reasons is how the new jungle works. Because your own camps give less experience to the enemy jungler, as Elise, because you just want to perma gank, it's actually more worth to perma gank because the counterplay for the enemy jungler is not as high as it used to be. This means that for Dark Harvest Elise with Night Harvester and Sorcerer's Shoes, not only are you going to one-shot pretty much anyone on the Rift, but there's little the enemy jungler can actually do to this playstyle. Because of the buffs to the Night Harvester as well towards the end of Season 12. Likewise with Elise herself, these have just pushed her into OP territory. You can see in Platinum and above to have close to a 53% win rate, and she's not the easiest champion to play. You do have to have some mechanics on her, so this speaks volumes to how giga OP she actually is. With the rune page as well, close to a 55% win rate, over a 55% win rate with Sork Shoes, Night Harvester, Shadow Flame. She's just too broken. So if you don't have her in your champion pool, honestly, you're probably missing a trick here. Now moving on to number 6 on the countdown, this tech is also out of career from a pro player. So Ruler, the world champion AD carry who just got to the semifinals with Genji, he's actually been playing Ravenous Hydra Varus. Now this does sound a little bit weird, right? Why would you go Ravenous Hydra on Varus? Well, the reason why is because you're going lethality afterwards, and it's one of the most fun setups in the game. So pretty much the idea is the Ravenous Hydra with the AD stacking you get, you can use this with your lethality, right? And also Hydra helps with your wave clear, of course, but also the cleave passive. It works so well with your abilities when you use them from afar. And you can see in Challenger from 34 games, 65% win rate, and then from Master and above, 60 games, a 60% win rate. This does actually work. Just be very careful though, guys, because you are really playing Varus to like scale with this build, or at least spike off Manamune and then Prowler's Claw. So until that point, you're probably not going to be doing too much damage, especially because you won't have stacked your Ravenous Hydra passive until the mid to late game. So do be a little bit wary during the early game. You also want to be running Comet with this setup, so do not go lethal tempo, but give it a shot in your games. If any of you have actually tried this out, let us know in the comments section. Now moving on to the top 5 builds for 13.1. This one I mentioned yesterday in our tier list video, and make sure you check that out by the way, so you know who the most broken and worst champions will be for 13.1. But this one resides in the mid lane, and this is playing Ahri. Now put your hand up if you're playing Ahri with Electrocute, right? It's probably going to be most people, but I'm talking here about playing Ahri with Spellbook, and that's honestly the tech. Like, that's all you need. We're not even talking about items here. So whether you want to go like Everfrost, like it's recommending here with Sorcery Shoes, Shadow Flame, if you want to go Lucidity Boots, maybe you even want to go like Leandries or Ludens, it doesn't even matter what mythic you're going, right? The key to all of this is actually going Spellbook. Electrocute might help you a little bit, right, during the laning phase, a bit of pressure and stuff, your one-shot potential if you want to go like Ludens, but honestly, it's just a bit of a waste. Ahri is really not that champion that she used to be. For those of you who are boomers like me, you'll remember Deathfire Grasp Ahri back in the day. She's a very different champion these days. So with Spellbook and going the Inspiration tree and then pairing this with Resolve secondary tree, something like Bone Plating and Overgrowth like it's recommending here, so this is in Challenger Elo across the world, you can just see how effective this is in over 50 matches, close to a 70% win rate with this setup. Just please make sure you're going TP with this setup, but Ahri is a very good mid laner as well because you can blind pick her, and she doesn't really have like many hard counters. You should be fine into pretty much every champion, so she's definitely worth having in your champion pool come 13.1. Now moving on to number 4, we just talked about runes for Ahri. Well, let's talk about items for Zac. Now whether you're playing Zac in the top lane or in the jungle, what I want you guys to start doing on this champion is getting Radiant Virtue. So I don't know what mythics some of you are going, maybe you're going Jackshow with Demonic Embrace, but think about this, Jackshow's getting nerfed next patch, right? I mean, it might actually still be okay for Zac because it's working off the resistances you're buying from items, and you will be going tank, right? But if you are going Demonic, you're getting nothing really extra from the Jackshow passive, so it's a little risky, right? So really just the better option here is to go Sunfire Aegis, then into Radiant Virtue. This with your ultimate when you jump in during team fights, it makes you unkillable and also buffs your allies. And that's really what Zac is about. You're not playing him to one-shot and just, 1v9. You're playing him more around your team, more utility based. That's what this item brings, so Radiant Virtue. It's super broken. And here I've just chosen top lane Zac and Challenger across the world. So if it works against the best players in the world, how is it not going to work in every single elo? So think about testing this out even right now. You don't have to wait for 13.1 for this. It's really strong right now, so give it a try in your games. Now moving into the top 3. Number 3. Most of you are probably playing Draven, right, with lethality. So you might be getting an early serrated Dirk into Essence Reaver, then Eclipse, right? But actually one build, especially if you're against tankier champions, that might give you more wins is going Kraken Slayer Draven. Now these stats with this build, this is in high elo. So once again, if these players can make it work against the best players in the world, then it has to be somewhat legit, right? So in over 200 matches, this has a 70% win rate. Now why is Kraken Slayer so good on Draven? Well, it's just the tank shred, right? By going Essence Reaver and then Eclipse, you have to wait for Eclipse, right? To be able to one-shot people who have a bit of armor at that stage in a game. Once you get Kraken Slayer, you one-shot anyone. It doesn't matter how much HP or how much resistances they have, you deal the most amount of damage possible at that stage in a game, right? So it's super snowballing, and that's what Draven is. You're playing him to snowball off your adoration stacks, off your strong laning phase and early game, and then once you get Collector, that's all the lethality you actually need. Also, the execution is really useful, right? Once you pair this with Kraken, like, please guys, just try this out. You will feel the power when you do. And then finishing this off with Infinity Edge, this is probably the most like maxed out damage build in the entire game with Draven himself, because you have so much innate damage for your Q, of course. So if there are any Draven players out there, if you have not tried this build out, definitely go and do so. It's so fun. Now, coming in at number 2, this one is actually maybe a little surprising, right? Because if you're playing Maokai in the jungle at the moment, you might not even be aware if you haven't seen this. The Demonic Embrace, right, on these AP tanks is good. Kind of mentioned it for Zac and other champions like Udyr, you probably go it, right, if you're going Armax Udyr. But for Maokai, Demonic Embrace, followed by Liandry's Anguish. And you might be like, well, how is Maokai with this broken? Well, the reason I've put him number 2, and it's impossible for me not to, look at the stats for me. This is in high reload, right? So with Demonic Embrace into Liandry's Anguish, you have a 62% win rate in over 200 matches. That is absurd. This is one of the most broken setups on the Rift at the moment, and Maokai just is played nowhere near enough as he should be. And next patch, none of these items are getting changed. This is obviously awesome, and because of the recent buffs to Maokai, so they buffed your clear speed, right, in terms of your Q's damage, and maybe some other tech here that you should be aware of, is actually going the Blue Smite item. You can see that in over 160 matches, close to a 64% win rate. The reason this is so nice is because of the movement speed out of brushes. You are a ganking champion with that movement speed, especially when you have water walking. You don't even have to use your ultimate. You can just run up to enemy champions, press W, and they're most likely going to die. It's also really fun just half HPing enemy squishes with your E with this build because of the tick damage from Demonic and Liandry's, and you still deal really good damage to tanky champions as well because of the HP damage from the items as well. After this, you probably do want to build some sort of HP item though to really trigger the Demonic Embrace passive, so think a little bit about that in your games, but try this out guys, especially if your team composition needs some AP from the jungle role. So Maokai with Liandry's is number 2. Now number 1, honestly you guys can probably guess who this is because I've mentioned in our last 2 videos, the tier list video, the most broken champions video. This champion, because of the recent buffs to him and because of the 13.1 buffs, if they do go through, that is the Rod of Ages and Seras Embrace, you guys can guess it, right? Kassadin is number 1. Like, how can I not put the Riftwalker here? Look at these stats for me, by the way, without the buffs in 13.1 that will help him so much. He has over a 52.5% win rate and over 230,000 matches. Like, just get me out. How he is not getting nerfed or just like bypassing any sort of nerfs, whether they are direct or indirect, so like to his items, maybe some runes he might run, it's just beyond me. Like, I don't know if there's some sort of Kassadin main on the balance team and they really want to peak early season, but this just does not make sense. This win rate will probably skyrocket to like 54% come 13.1, and I've said in the last 2 videos, if you are a mid laner and you do not have Kassadin in your champion pool, please do yourself a favor. It is just free LP waiting for you. Play this champion, abuse him. The Rod of Ages buff, of course, so you're getting more HP, and also the passive, more movement speed, right? There's also some quality of life changes and bug fixes. And then to Seras, where you're getting AP from the passive, you're also getting flat ability haste now, and you're getting the lifeline passive, so the shield is back based on your mana. Guys, it is over if you pick this champion in 13.1. So those were the 10 most broken builds and champion combos if you like for 13.1. If you did enjoy the video, please remember to let us know by smashing that like button down below, and I will see you in our next season 13 daily upload. This has been Peace.